Hello and welcome to the latest Blood Red podcast. I am your host, Stephen Killen. Liverpool sit 8 points clear at the top of the Premier League table thanks to their 2-2 draw with Aston Villa, and they now know their path for a possible 7th Premier League crown, or Champions League crown. We may be virtual, but there's plenty to get our teeth into today, and I am joined by Ian Doyle. Ian, how are you?
I am very good. I'm also not stood directly next to the sun, as if anybody who can see me on YouTube, it looks pretty ridiculous. Not much I can do about it.
And Paul Gorst, who has learned the perils of the school half term from going to the play centre this week. Are you bruised or refreshed?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I mean, you give with one hand, you take away with the other. I was on the way to work this morning, and I got on Egbert Road and remembered that it's half term, and suddenly me run to the office was a lot clearer than I expected. So, take the rough with the smooth, don't you, Stephen?
And before we get started, I'd just like to say thank you to our sponsors, NordVPN. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/bloodred. Our link will give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box. And if you're watching on YouTube, please leave a like and a comment. Or if you're listening to on your podcast platform, please leave a thumbs up or a star. And don't forget to send any questions over email to joe.rimmer@reachplc.com, who is currently busy this afternoon. So you've got my dulcet tones today. But, gents, we'll start off with Aston Villa. You were both there on Wednesday. Ian, we'll start with you. How was it?
Well, the press food was good. I mean, that's the main thing for me and Paul. As long as we were well fed, that's all that matters, really. In terms of the game, I actually thought Liverpool did okay. Definitely did enough to win. I know before the game, a few eyebrows were raised on the podcast that we did beforehand, where I said it'd be a bit of a mad game and Liverpool would win 4-2. And of course, if Diogo Jota, in particular Darwin Nunez, puts his chance away, then that would have been the score. But, we could do that for almost every game. But I had a feeling that it would be one of these games where it was slightly end-to-end, because of the fact that both teams were in a run of a lot of important games, which there's going to be more of them coming up for both teams. But for Liverpool, I actually thought they did enough to deserve to win. They deserved to win, I thought. I mean, it wasn't massively the best performance that they've ever had this season, but Villa Park's not an easy place to go to. Funnily enough, I think it's only Arsenal have won there, haven't they, in the league? They won 1-0 there very, very early on in the season. And Villa obviously beat City. Had a couple of other good results, and they're a Champions League round of 16 team, and I know we'll go on to the draw in a bit. There's every chance there could be a Champions League quarterfinals as well, which they could end up playing Liverpool. So overall, I think the one thing that annoyed me was after the game where Liverpool, as you said before, went 8 points clear at the top of the Premier League with 12 games to go, and judging from, and you should never really do it, but unfortunately in our job we have to. Just on social media, you'd think that they just got relegated. It was absolutely insane, the meltdown. There was absolutely no need for it whatsoever. And I think it's probably an example of, I think some supporters are just, let's just put it this way, if the players have got the same nerve as those supporters, then they probably still might get relegated this season, because they've absolutely just lost it, some of these fans. And, that's their prerogative. They can do what they want. The thing is, I think they're kind of worried that Arsenal will go off and win all their remaining games this season. But I spoke to somebody this week and they were saying, problem is, these people are forgetting that this Arsenal team are not Manchester City from last year or a couple of years before that, when Liverpool were challenging with them. And very, very few teams in the history of football have been what Manchester City have been. So if you're expecting Arsenal to go the whole rest of the season winning all their games, that's slightly unrealistic. And I'll tell you what, if they actually do it, then fair play. Arsenal deserve to win the league. So Liverpool are still in a very strong position. And as Slot said, I think it's before the game against Villa, he said that, look, we've got these 2 hard games coming up, Villa and Man City away on Sunday. When we get through them, this is him talking, but we've got 11 games left and 7 of them are at home. So I think that does put into perspective that slightly misleading fixtures. It's funny because we've mentioned this before as well, that Liverpool got through to the Champions League straight to the playoffs, so they could, have 2 weekends off, and 2 midweeks off, and also get a decent draw in the round of 16. And oh look, We ended up playing Everton and Villa away, the two hardest games, and we'll get on to the playing, although I think everybody knows by now in the next round. So overall, I think a little bit of perspective is needed. I thought Liverpool did more than enough to win the game. Just frustrating that they didn't because of the couple of misses that they had.
And Paul, it's probably fair to say that there are scars from these recent title races where Liverpool have been beaten by the barest of margins. Do you agree with Doyle in the sense maybe there's a slight overreaction, or is it really that Liverpool are probably drawing too many games in the context of this title race?
Yeah, I think a bit of both. I mean, I don't really troll the nether regions of Twitter after the game, but I follow a lot of sensible, reasoned people, and there was a little bit of frustration after the game. I think mainly because of the chances Liverpool missed. You know, that Jota one in the first half, which had it been a Jota with a good sort of full run under his belt, he would have tucked that away 9 times out of 10. Obviously, he hasn't played a lot of football over the last 4 months, has he? I think now it's just done a little calculation on it, actually. 199 minutes of the past 1,500 in the Premier League, you know, for Jota. So a little bit of rust there. So you can forgive that for Salah. But the Nunez one is obviously the glaring one, isn't it? And sort of, you know, in a wider debate about Darwin Nunez and Liverpool's need for a number 9 this summer. I think we've spoken about that, you know, quite a lot on this podcast. And it's fair to say, I think we're entering maybe the final few months of Darwin Nunez's time at Liverpool. And the interesting thing for me was Slot saying yesterday in his press conference that, you know, players can miss chances and that happens and that is part of football, but you can't let your head drop and you can't let your work rate levels dip, you know, in response to what happens with stuff like that. So, yeah, Slot said he was going to have a word with Nunez about it, but there's no getting away from it. There was a huge miss, and the complexion of the entire analysis of the game really would have changed on the basis of that touch just being a lot more assured. So, yeah, a really incredible miss. But, you know, a point at Aston Villa shouldn't really be sneezed at. You know, like Dooley says, they've only been beaten once this season at home, and that was to Arsenal in the first couple of weeks of the season. I think since then it was 6 draws and 6 wins at Villa Park. It's now obviously 7 draws. And, yeah, not, you know, a couple of days on from it, not a massive panic station moment or result. But I think Liverpool could do with a bit of a statement result, a bit of a statement performance, because, you know, drawing a few too many away from home now. Obviously, Everton, Nottingham Forest a few weeks earlier, Newcastle going back to December. Just these games where, you know, if you win it, you come away thinking, well, this Liverpool are really set out to go on and win the title. They just keep being reeled ever so slightly back in by these results, and yeah, it's unlikely to get much easier going to the Etihad on Sunday.
So it's obviously hard to maintain the level of success that Liverpool had earlier in the season, but there's a question from Steve Payne here, which makes a good point. And after the good start and the new manager bounce sort of extended for 3 months, Liverpool have sort of strayed away from finishing teams off, and it feels like every time when Liverpool are maybe 1-0 up or it's 1-1, it's not as assured as it was when Liverpool were at the beginning of Arne Slot's tenure.
Well, yeah, but that's going to happen because teams, you know, work other teams out. That's just simply the way that it is, and also the human beings. So when they realise there's more at stake, they're going to become a little bit more touchy, as it were. I mean, having said that, with the exception of the Wolves game, where Wolves didn't have a good go in the second half and Liverpool did mess about a bit, I don't necessarily think Villa did that. I know they had a chance at the end, but Villa didn't really create a lot in the second half. Everton didn't after Liverpool went 2-1 up. So there is a bit of a slight concern that they're not able to kill teams off. You look at Forest where they had the chances, you know, that kind of thing. But, you know, that's the 2 chances at Villa. But that happens sometimes. And, you know, I think if you look at it through the course of the season, and Gorsty's written about this, is that Liverpool have kind of been operating without a goal-scoring number 9. But they haven't had to, because you've got Salah scored 28, hasn't he, this season? Maybe, you know, he's at least 28, it might be 29, actually. And Gakpo's got like 15, 16. So even Diaz has scored about 13. So
29 now, yeah.
Yeah, 29, yeah, sorry. Yeah, 29. So look, he's got that many. I've lost count. So I wouldn't necessarily have too much of a concern with that. My worry is more that they start conceding soft goals again, which is something that was happening last season. you don't necessarily have to go away from home and have to keep on scoring 3 to win, but Liverpool would have had to have done that at Everton and would have had to have done that at Villa. And that's not sustainable over a longer period of time. So I think they just need to get back to actually being a little bit more, not so much ruthless, but more mean. I think that defence wins titles. And I know Jamie Carragher wrote something today in his column in one of the other newspapers, where he basically said it's almost become down to a Premier League title battle between Liverpool's attack and Arsenal's defence. So it will be interesting to see how that pans out. But yeah, overall, I just think, as you said, is that you can't expect to be brilliant for 38 games. What I would say is Arsenal's Invincibles, who Arsenal hold up as the greatest team ever because they didn't lose a game, they were only 7 points clear at this stage of the season when they won it from Manchester United. Although I think United had a game in hand or something like that. So basically, they're not far off what Arsenal were in that season, but it shows you 2 things. One, how difficult it is to win the title these days because the numbers have shot up in terms of the points needed. And the second thing is that Arsenal are still very much it. They've only lost 2 games this season in the league. And if you go over the last, I think it's 20 or 15 games, they've got an identical record to Liverpool. Liverpool are still benefiting from that start, which you were just mentioning before, where they got some very good results when they had the new manager bounce. So if they do end up winning the league, it'll be down to that.
Ghosty, is there maybe an element of over-reliance on Salah? Well, it's clearly the case, but is there maybe being stubborn in his team selection, like we're seeing Chiesa, who's a European Championships winner, and you're barely getting a sniff, really, and you got Harvey Elliott, who is also not getting as many minutes as he might have wanted, but you can also argue they probably didn't do themselves or cover themselves in any glory with that defeat in the FA Cup at Plymouth. But when you've got players who are struggling or are trying to find the fitness in the likes of Jota and Nunez, and probably when you're not killing these teams off, the attackers are probably where you are going to sort of pick up these draws, and maybe even could have been the case late on against Aston Villa, where they maybe even might have lost it at the end.
Yeah, I mean, there is an over-reliance on Salah, but what team wouldn't over-rely on a player who's probably been the best player in Europe this season? Yeah, I think he's been responsible for over 60% of Liverpool's goals in terms of goal contributions, which is stark, really. Cody Gakpo's having a fantastic season, but I think Liverpool have really missed him in the last couple of games. Diaz, I think he's so much better suited off the left than he is down the middle. And Jota's just, typical Jota, being injured again for 4 months of the Premier League season. So, yeah, it's just unfortunate, really. Darwin Nunez, like I say, don't mean to keep or make this the Darwin Nunez out show, but he hasn't done it this season. I think we are heading towards his inevitable exit. So, Liverpool have had to rely on Mo Salah. At least he's come up with the goods. I think there's an over-reliance on the pool of 4 midfielders going into 3 positions. Szoboszlai, Jones, McAllister and Gravenberch. Between them all, I think they pretty much started every Premier League game, haven't they? Doesn't seem to trust Endo, aside from doing a very specific job to close out games late on. Doesn't seem to think Harvey Elliott can do it, and he wasn't given many reasons for changing his mind on that one at Plymouth, was he? But I do think it's a bit strange, the sort of cold shoulder that Elliott's got this season. I think he's been able to contribute far more than he's been given the opportunity to. So hopefully that changes, just to lighten the load on the other 4 midfielders, like I say. But I think, again, this might come back to a little bit of a unwillingness to bolster those midfield ranks in January. I said at the time, it feels like if there is a lack of trust in Endo, then can Liverpool do something that brings forward the deal by 6 months and brings in someone who they feel can compete with Gravenberch for the position in that number 6 role? But they've kept the powder dry, and hopefully, it doesn't lead to burnout for Gravenberch, who has now played the most minutes that he has of his senior career, certainly in the last 2 or 3 years anyway.
It's hard not to talk about the Villa game without talking about that Nunez miss. In the context of the game, it probably was game-changing in it to a degree, because it was 15 minutes from time, but you also caveat that with Jota's one in the first half. But it's sort of been symptomatic of his time at Liverpool, hasn't it? It's not been stop-start, but he's had moments like Brentford, but he just hasn't kicked on.
Well, that's the thing, is that there were some fans saying, like, if Liverpool lose the league now, it's Nunez's fault. And it's like, well, hang on. He would have drawn at Brentford had he not scored those 2 goals. I mean, and of course, he opened the scoring against Villa when they played them at home with a goal that in some ways wasn't massively dissimilar in the sense of what he was trying to do. He saw the defender coming across, and I think he attempted to lift it over him like he did with Martinez for the opening goal in the game in November, but obviously got way too much on it. I think Jota's been slightly fortunate because his miss was pretty bad in that first half. He wasn't even close. You know, he was clean. He was clean through as well, and you would fully expect him to at the very least hit the target, especially when his tail's up after he set up the goal for Salah. So I think overall Jota did okay, but he didn't have to get tired again after an hour, and I think that's what happened against Wolves at the weekend. And you can tell he's somebody. The first 2 Premier League games he started since October, so you would have wanted Nunez to kick on and not suffer the kind of crisis in confidence that he clearly did against Wolves as well, where he did nothing when he came on. This is now a time where they want him to step up. So I would imagine he's going to get some minutes against City. I don't think he'll start, but he's going to have to come on at some point, I think. And going back to what Ghosty was saying about the midfield, I mean, Endo and Elliott and Tyler Morn and James McConnell, and I know Trey Nyone's a youngster, but they've all started 0 Premier League games between them this season, which is pretty astounding when you think about, certainly with Endo and Elliott, who played such a big part last season. And yeah, you can tell from the midfield that I get the impression that there's a few players there just trying to get through to the Newcastle game and then play that and then have a rest for a few days, because I think they're starting to look a little bit tired, not necessarily in the legs, but like in the mind. There's been an awful lot of big games for Liverpool, semi-finals, cup games, and big league games at that, where quite well you've got to win every single one, and as was shown last season, that takes a very specific mindset, and you're never going to win every single one. So it's how you then cope with not winning them, which is where it comes right back to what I said at the beginning about drawing at Everton, drawing at Aston Villa, where you're within, you should really be beating Everton from that position. Although overall the game, Liverpool didn't really deserve to win that one, but they probably deserved to win against Aston Villa. And when you get in a position where you're 1-0 up and then you get it back to 2-2 and you have a chance like Nunez, people are going to get frustrated. But how Liverpool react, it's got to be the question. It's almost as if like that game against City now on Sunday is who reacts the best. Liverpool from this perceived disappointment of dropping a few points at Aston Villa, or Man City, who absolutely got tonked by Real Madrid, a team who less than 12 months ago were a bit lucky to beat them on penalties to carry on and win the 1 millionth Champions League.
Gus, just staying on Nunez one more. It's hard not to cover the Arne Slot comments in yesterday's press conference, and he's been quite good at shouldering responsibility, Slot, in the context where he doesn't hang out players to dry, which not many players do the managers do these days for players. But it felt quite prevalent and quite eye-opening how he made a conscious effort to talk about his attitude and how his performance level dropped after that miss, and it was almost sort of a reminder of it's either now or never for him, which it's been the writing's almost been on the wall for a while anyway, but it felt like now he's publicly saying this, it's almost the fans are sort of getting open to the idea of this could be his final few games at Liverpool as well.
Yeah, it was as much of a kick up the backside as you're probably going to get from Arne Slot, publicly at least. Said any striker can miss a chance, and that's true. Like Doyle just mentioned there, Jota's chance was a really wild finish, wasn't it? I saw it back on the replay when I got home, and it ends up going closer to a throw-in, really. It was a terrible finish, but you'd almost forgive Jota that because he is usually so ice cold. Nunez hasn't got anything like the same reputation. And when it came across goal, I knew he was going to miss. And that sounds terrible to say, but I just knew he wasn't going to have the composure to just get a knee over it, side foot into the empty net, 3-2 Liverpool. And for a player who cost £64 million initially, potentially raising to 85 million, it just isn't good enough, is it? So I can understand why Slot was at pains to stress that the work rate dipped, because it did. Nunez sort of recoiled into his shell after that miss and didn't really do much else. There was the one where Salah holds it up for him. He can't get the shot off. He tries to play on top of his lie over, hits it and goes out for the goal kick. And this is a player who's clearly low on confidence. And when the rest of the team is flying, you can sort of help them get through that and maybe put another one on a plate for them. But Liverpool not really in a position to carry any passengers at the moment.
I think what he's trying to make the point there about Nunez is, Liverpool can't rely on him. And for that amount of money, it's funny because if he didn't cost that much money, I don't think there'd be quite as much made of him. But he's been there for nearly 3 years now. And I think from Nunez's point of view, we've also got to bear in mind that he was signed by Jurgen Klopp, and he was far more productive under Klopp in those 2 seasons. While he's still that kind of impression that he could be doing a bit more. This season, he's had to change, and he's been good up until the last couple of games in putting in the work rate, and that's ultimately the thing that Slot wanted to point out. He said, players can miss, but you can't react the way that he did. And it's got back to what I was saying before about reactions. We're now getting to that stage of the season where it is about how, because the games are coming so thick and so fast, and every single game counts, that you can't afford to be moping about. You can't afford to, you can lose games, but you can't afford to then take that into the next game. You can harness the good stuff and by winning and getting more momentum. But I think Liverpool have been quite good this season at not really reacting as such to things that have gone wrong. And Slot said, look what happened against Everton. They struggled in the second half against Wolves as a consequence, but they came through it because they showed the character. And I think up until this week, Nunez has shown that because he's had a bit of an up and down season where he's been in and out of the team. And I think that's the one thing that Slot wanted to remind him. And we know that Nunez then went onto social media and had 2 or 3 goes at putting a tweet away, which obviously some people said, well, that's very much like his shooting. But I think he's a human being. It's going to hurt him. But they've just got to put all that to one side now. They just have to get on with it and just get on with. There's a trophy to be won here. They've got themselves into such a great position. They can't afford to have players who are thinking a little bit too much about themselves than the team. And then then you can bring up the fact that Trent, Salah, Van Dijk, these are 3 players who I'm not sure if anyone's noticed. They haven't really signed their new contracts yet. So they're technically out of contract at the end of the season, and they're thinking about their futures. But it hasn't impacted their game. And if Nunez is thinking about his future, because let's be honest, we all know Liverpool are going to sign a striker in the summer, and it'll probably mean that Nunez has got a very good chance of leaving. He has to just concentrate on the here and now, because he could end up being the difference between Liverpool winning the league and not winning the league, and him winning a Premier League winners' medal, which surely as a footballer, what you want is to win silverware.
We have got Paul Gorst back. Paul, do you have anything to add on Nunez, or shall we move into the thick of the Champions League draw?
Yeah, I thought his tweet was interesting, wasn't it, and the timing of it, and carried a lot of the hallmarks of what's made him a bit of a fan favourite to a point. The sort of defiant, heart on the sleeve response, and the timing of it was interesting. Within like sort of 20 minutes of Arne Slot's press conference. Now I was in the car park of the action when I saw it, so I hadn't even left the training ground, and he's tweeting about not throwing in the towel and all that sort of stuff. And he will fight on, I'm sure. But like Doyle says, Liverpool need him. I've seen loads of supporters say that, I'm done with him now and all that sort of stuff. And it's fine to have that opinion, but at the end of the season, because he can't go anywhere, Liverpool are going to have to carry on selecting him for these big games. So he needs an arm around the shoulder, he needs his chin up, his head high, and go into Sunday and see if he can help Liverpool, continue their quest for the Premier League title. And like Doyle says, if he leaves with the Premier League winners' medal around his neck, then he'll get a pat on the back and good luck for the future. And I think supporters will look back fondly on the memories that he's given, because he scored a lot of sort of big, important, famous moments, hasn't he? The Newcastle double, the Brentford double, and the Nottingham Forest winner last season. There's a few in there, but probably a bit few and far between for the price that Liverpool have paid for him.
And we're speaking about an hour and a half after Liverpool learned their Champions League fate almost, and it's an away tie to start off with in the round of 16 against Paris Saint-Germain. Tie to take place on the 4th or 5th of March, and then the return leg at Anfield will be the 11th or 12th of March. And don't want to think too far ahead, but if you get past the challenge of the prisons, it's a clash, an all-Premier League clash potentially against Aston Villa, or even a reunion with Simon Mignolet at Club Bruges. But Doyle, I'll come to you on this. It's obviously a tough draw, and it feels like Paris Saint-Germain have moved away from that tag of being dark horses and sort of not living up to that tag, and they very much look like a team to be reckoned with. But even more interestingly, if you look at the fixture list, it's the 26th, Newcastle at home, and then a few days later it'll be Paris Saint-Germain away, and then before the Carabao Cup final on March 16, 4 days earlier, they'll be hosting Paris Saint-Germain in the second leg. And I don't want to look too far ahead and go semi-finals where it could be Arsenal, but it's also coming up to that point now where it feels like every sort of game and every few weeks and patch of fixtures are almost season defining.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying before. It is that kind of time of the season now where every game is a must-win almost. Well, it feels like a must-win. It isn't always a must-win, especially in a two-leg game. Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is that obviously if Liverpool, it's a couple of things here. At least they can't get beat by Real Madrid in the final because they'd have to play them at some point before they get to the final. And also, if they get through to the semi-final, play Arsenal, that game is either side of the Premier League game against Arsenal. So you'd have Arsenal. But Liverpool won't be looking that far ahead because they've drawn PSG. And what a great reward it is for finishing top of the group. Top of the league standings, that new revamped league. The reality is no one knew how it was going to go. It was a complete unknown. But what you could have done, as people on the podcast might know, I'm from St. Helens, big fan of rugby league. For years, they've had a league and then they follow it at the end with the playoffs. And for a long time, clubs have got on to the fact that you can be not very good during the league stage, but as long as you get a good run of form going into us and get into those, the positions that you can get into the playoffs, as Paris Saint-Germain have done, as Real Madrid have done, and you've got momentum, then the second half of the season is where things get sorted. And I think PSG have got their house in order. They beat Man City, 2-0 down to Man City, won that. Absolutely tonked Stuttgart, didn't they, in the last game to get into the top 24, and then they've just 10-0 against Brest. So overall, they are one of the form teams in Europe, and it's the one draw that Liverpool didn't want. It's the one that they've got. So, from Paris Saint-Germain's point of view, they'll not want us to play Liverpool, but given the way the form's going at the moment, they'll fancy it. I mean, you mentioned about they've kind of gone away from the whatever the French for Galacticos is. We did this the other day. What were we saying? Galactiques? I don't know what you could say it, but they've gone to and they've been they always seem to win the French league, don't they? They're 10 points clear at the moment, so they don't have that kind of pressure on them at the moment, whereas Liverpool do. The only good thing is that Liverpool have a full week to prepare for that game, more or less, because they have no weekend game beforehand because they're out of the FA Cup, and then they play Southampton in the middle of it. So, in that sense, not that bad. But let's be honest, the draw could have been a lot easier for Liverpool, and it seems as though there is precious little reward for the hard work of finishing top in the opening stage.
Can I just jump in there? Because I'd argue it's the opposite point to that. I mean, Liverpool have been unfortunate that they've drawn Paris Saint-Germain, but that obviously owes a lot to them struggling in their own group stages, as you say. But the path to the semi-finals is quite inviting, isn't it? Aston Villa or Club Bruges. With respect to Aston Villa, who've obviously just given Liverpool a hell of a game, with midweek. But if you'd have offered supporters that at the start of the season, that would be massively bite your hand off stuff, wouldn't it? So there is value in finishing as high up the 36-team Champions League table as you can. And Liverpool might be a little bit unfortunate that they've drawn, a very good Paris Saint-Germain team as a result of that. But if they can get past them, that path to the semi-final is looking really intriguing. And the fact that they can't play Barcelona until the final either, can they? You look at who Real Madrid they're going to have to get by, and of course Real Madrid will shrug and say that we're Real Madrid, but that's a lot more of a tougher run than Liverpool's, and it's obvious to see which team finished top and which team just about scraped through.
You think so? I mean, I think there's merit to finishing the top 8 because you missed the playoff round, but other than that, I just don't think there's any difference between the top 8. Look at Aston Villa. Aston Villa got Bruges. I think they finished 7th or 8th. Villa. They got Bruges, and then they're going to play they could play a Premier League team who they've just drawn with at home. So I don't think they're going to be that fussed. So
but I think generally it will shake out in terms of teams who are 23rd, 22nd in that table, probably in future seasons will more often than not be teams who you would expect to be down there. I think Liverpool's just been a bit unlucky that PSG didn't really get it together until late on. But yeah, I mean, again, Liverpool a little bit unlucky that the fact that because they're in the Carabao Cup final, they've had to play that Aston Villa game on Wednesday, because otherwise they would have had an entire week to prepare for Sunday against Manchester City at the time when City had just been given a pasting over 2 legs against Real Madrid.
It's a good segue that really goes to moving into City, and I'll throw it to you first, Doyle. It's never easy to play City, and I sort of feel like being in this job long enough, the form book goes out the window and all the cliches with that. What do you feel? Is it a must win for Liverpool, or is it a Liverpool win, do you think, Doyle?
It's not a must win, but I don't think there's ever been a game in the last 5 or 6 years where you go to Man City and go, this is a must win, because you're probably not going to win, let's be honest. I think for Liverpool, it would help if they didn't lose. And if anybody starts panicking if they draw up Man City, then I'm sorry, but you just really do need to calm down a little bit, because every single game after that will be easier. I think while form book, I don't think does go out the window for these kind of games. You go back and have a look. The one time Liverpool got absolutely battered, well, 2 times they got battered by City, which is 4-1 home and 4-1 away, or 4-1 at home in the COVID season, 4-1 away a couple of years ago, is when they were struggling. Now, Man City got beat at Anfield back in October, November time, because Man City was struggling, Liverpool were doing well. And I think if you take the form of the 2 teams, in terms of the Premier League form, I think City have actually been pretty good since the turn of the year, because I think they've realised, hang on, we might not even qualify, get in the top 4 here and qualify for the Champions League. So they've turned it around to a certain degree. A couple of the signings have been all right, a couple of them less so, shall we say. Problem for City is that, John Stones is meant to be injured now. Haaland is clearly not fully fit. And I think they've got 1 or 2 concerns in the same way that you could say Liverpool have, in terms of, Conor Bradley's out, Cody Gakpo we're not sure on yet. Jota and Trent are coming back from injuries. That's why they got substituted on Wednesday. Ryan Gravenberch quite clearly very tired at the moment. McAllister, you could say the same as well. So no team's going to be properly at full strength. But this one, going back to what I said before, is about reactions now. It's who's going to react better to what happened in midweek. And I think Liverpool are in a better position. But the only difference is, if this game had been played about a month ago, I'd say Liverpool would be strong favourites to win. But City have got that Nico in now, haven't they, to play in defensive midfield. And the one thing that Liverpool had on City in the game earlier this season is that they had legs and they could just run around and just run through City, which is what they kept on doing. And in fact, to be honest, I'd actually argue that Liverpool's 2-0 win over City was more comprehensive than Arsenal's 5-1 win over them, because the overall performance, I think, at no point in getting with the Liverpool game did you think City were going to win or get anything from it. But if you watch the Arsenal City game, and when it went to 1-1, City had been the best team for about 30, 35 minutes. And then, they give them 2 goals and that's that. So there's nothing to be afraid of for Liverpool. I think there'll be a bit of trepidation because it's Man City away. But overall, yeah, it's not a must win, but it's certainly a game they can win.
Of course, you said it before, it'd be a statement win if Liverpool need a statement win. But is it the perfect opportunity to play them, given their recent struggles and coming in off the back of that Real Madrid defeat, which basically has provided the perfect blueprint how to beat them with balls over the top, playing quick from right to left, and even a Mo Salah-esque goal from Kylian Mbappe cutting in from the left? Yeah,
I think this obviously is probably the best time to play them Liverpool have had for years, really, certainly in the Pep Guardiola era. 13 defeats this season across all competitions for Man City, which is stark, really, when you think about it. And the thing that struck me is there's still Manchester City to a point. They still look very sharp in possession, composed, and look like they can hurt any team in the world. But as soon as they get a little bit of a knock or a setback, they collapse. They absolutely go to pieces. And that happened at Arsenal. Like Doyle says, they were well in that game until Phil Foden passes it to Thomas Partey. It's 2-1, and then next thing the game is absolutely taken away from them. You look at the Manchester derby, they were winning that, and then Amad Diallo equalises, or rather, does he win a penalty? And then Amad goes on and gets the winner, doesn't he? And they just don't respond well to setbacks. It happened at PSG. They went 2-0 up there. As soon as PSG put the foot on the gas, City went to bits. It's just a common theme, and it's something that Liverpool can perhaps look to exploit on Sunday. The only time they haven't really got imploded on themselves was against Chelsea, and that was when Nicholas Jackson scores. I think it was Nicholas Jackson. He scores early on from a Kushnerov mistake on his debut, and City actually did respond well that day. But if you can sort of give them a punch on the nose, as Jurgen Klopp might have referred to it once, then you can take the game away from them, and I think that'll be Liverpool's best route to victory. Really looking to really put the foot on the throat early and give them that sort of blow that they've shown in recent months they're unable to sort of respond from.
Doyle, have you been impressed by maybe the response from City in the sense where they have come back from this difficult run? And like you say, maybe a month ago, Liverpool and City were in two different sort of stratospheres, and now they're almost coming sort of a level pegging where you don't really know what Liverpool team's going to turn up, and equally you don't really know what team or what Manchester City team's going to turn up.
But I think Liverpool have still only lost one Premier League game all season, which was a very long time ago. So I think we can safely say that Liverpool will be very competitive in this game. I think, as Gorsty said with City, it's interesting to see if Liverpool score first, see what happens. I don't necessarily mean in the first 2 or 3 minutes. Say they do quite well in the first 20 and then score. Then you wonder how the home crowd will react. I mean, they've had to put up with some strange results, shall we say. I mean, look what happened against Real Madrid just last week. City were winning 2-1 with about 8 minutes to go, wasn't it, or something? In fact, probably even less than that. And they ended up losing, and then they just basically, wouldn't say they chucked it in the Bernabeu, but they hardly put up a massive fight, did they, from the minute they went behind early on. So, early-ish goal will give City a massive test. But by the same token, if City score first, they are a very good team, as Gorsty said. When they've got the momentum, they can still create the chances, still score the goals. So it'll be a big test. And the other thing is, City will not want to give up their title, because they're not in the league. City won't want to give up their title without their own kind of statement. And if they can beat Liverpool here, after what happened to them against Arsenal, after what happened at Anfield earlier this season, they'll be like, hey, we're still here. Don't forget us, and we'll be back here next season. Well, provided they don't all those charges and stuff like that. So I think they're working on that basis. So it is a big game. But going back to what I said before about the form book, if it does go to any kind of form book, Liverpool should be thinking of winning, and they should be capable of winning. And that brings us all the way back to the start when we were talking about the strikers. And it could well be if Jota or later on Nunez ends up having a kind of day where they can score. I think Jota scored at City a couple of years ago, didn't he, in a 2-2? So he's done it. Nunez has scored against City. So you have to wait and see. But it may ultimately come down to your man, Mohamed, on the wing. And he does love scoring a goal against Man City. So let's see if he can come up with the goods again.
Of course, just before we move into our teams, another thing that Slot said after the game against Aston Villa, or maybe even yesterday, Liverpool have never really been outclassed this season. They've always been in games when they've had these chances, and where we have been, well, maybe my own mindset coming into this was where Liverpool haven't been too good, but I suppose they can go into it thinking we can just go back to what we've done all season.
Yeah, I mean, the difficult one is the fact that they've just had a taxing examination at Villa Park on Wednesday night. But on the flip side, City have had to go to Madrid, and they've been, well beaten and demoralised, really, haven't they, with that result, that performance from the champions of Europe. So, I mean, the sort of logistics of it as well, Liverpool only going to Birmingham, like we say, and City having to go to Spain, Madrid, that could have an impact. We always hear about managers talking about this sort of stuff, and I mean, there's not many opportunities to do it now, but you're looking to see where you can rest, maybe Ryan Gravenberch here or there, but this certainly isn't the game for it. So, Slot was saying on Thursday the likes of Jota and Trent's minutes are being managed because of their recent injuries, and they don't want them breaking down again. Conor Bradley's issue has made that a little bit more straightforward for Slot now, in that he's just going to have to play Alexander-Arnold. But at the same token, I wouldn't really be looking to take Jota out either. He's a more reliable striker than Nunez in terms of, if he gets a chance of another goal, you'd want Jota on the end of it more than Nunez. But just in terms of what he's going to give you, Nunez is far more erratic, and the highs might be higher, but the lows, as we discovered on Wednesday, are certainly lower as well. So, yeah, it's there aren't too many options for Slot now, because we know he's not going to suddenly throw in an Endo or an Elliott. He has pretty much tended to use the same 14, 15 players. And Conor Bradley, of course, is sidelined for that one. So not expecting too much upheaval in terms of team selection.
Doyle's picking teams that you don't want to rest players or do wholesale changes for these type of games anyway, but it could be one of the most straightforward of the season, really, couldn't it?
Yeah. Are we picking our teams now then?
Yeah, go on.
Right. Well, yeah, it'll be Alisson in goal, Trent at right back, Canati and Van Dijk centre back, and I think Robertson did all right against Villa, so keep him at left back.
Of course, you can't really do much more than that, can you? Any changes or maybe?
No. I mean, I thought Tsimikas might have played on Wednesday, but Robertson seems to be nudging ahead in that sort of season-long battle. So, yeah, I'd be keeping it as it is. And I think Trent might be vitally important to this one, to be fair. Get him on the ball, get him to look to create those openings, those passes in behind that Liverpool can exploit.
Doyle, in terms of the midfield, could we see, there will be a change in terms of Curtis Jones anyway, as he starts on the left, but could we see the same midfield that got towards the last few minutes of the game where you had the likes of Szoboszlai, McAllister, or Gravenberch, Szoboszlai and Curtis Jones, you think?
I mean, he won't, but I'd not play Gravenberch, but I know he'll play him, but this is my team. I think Gravenberch's been poor the last two games. I think he needs a rest. I understand why he wouldn't want to rest him, but Curtis has to play. I think McAllister's been having his minutes managed lately. He's Liverpool's probably best player over the past couple of games, consistently. So he's got to play. And Szoboszlai's got all that running and energy. Well, he hasn't really had the end product perhaps you would have wanted over the last couple of weeks. I do think that what he can do and the pressing that he can do, it could just really, really annoy Man City an awful lot. So I'd have him in. But, just because I've said Jones, McAllister, Szoboszlai, I'm pretty sure it'll be Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai in the game itself.
Of course, would you be tempted to try and counteract that Nico Gonzalez deep line effective with Endo, or is he more benefited to being that player who comes in to show the game up in the final minutes?
Yeah, no, I can see it being the midfield three, I guess, that started Wednesday. Obviously, Jones was playing, but I'd drop him out. I think Szoboszlai is going to be massively important for forgetting about the pitch and really putting the cat amongst the pigeons with City. And Nico Gonzalez is the interesting one in this. It's almost how does he play? How does he fare? Obviously looking to fill in for Rodri, isn't he, for the remainder of the season? And Guardiola called him a mini Rodri the other week. But, it's all well and good being a mini Rodri, against the Newcastle team at home, but he won't have played a team as strong as Liverpool yet. So I think that is an area for Liverpool to exploit, because, the likes of Gundogan and Kovacic haven't really been at the races in City's midfield this season. So if they can overwhelm the midfield with Gravenberch and Szoboszlai in particular, I think this is where the game can be won for Liverpool.
Totally, it's probably a game made for Luis Diaz, isn't it? But the question probably begs, will you have him down the left or playing central? Or will you follow what Gorst said a bit earlier and keep Jota in the firing line?
If Gakpo is fit, he has to play, and you're obviously playing Salah. And yeah, I'd probably start with. I don't know, actually. That's a good question. Thank goodness I'm not a manager. I'd be sat here all day. I'd probably start with Diaz. Yeah, Diaz, but then say to him, just keep on annoying them. And I think if you can get in and around, and to be honest, that's what Jota would do anyway. But I think a little bit more control is provided when Diaz is up there. If a little less threat, but I think if Liverpool can get Gakpo, can get Salah into the game, then fine. I mean, if Gakpo hasn't made it, then you've got Diaz on the left and Jota down the middle.
Probably a good point. That Gorst, isn't it? Where you don't probably throw a player who's missed a game with a knock and is somewhat of a question mark anyway to throw.
Yeah, it'd be a massive blow if Gakpo doesn't make it. I think he's been excellent, to be fair, in the last sort of 2 or 3 months. He's really become a an important player for Liverpool, and yeah, I really hope he makes it, because if he does, I'm having him on the left, Salah down the right, obviously, and I'm sticking with Jota. I just think Jota can, just really, you need that work rate up there, don't you? And he's going to harry and harass the centre backs, and I think Gakpo against Kushnerov could be a bit of a mismatch, really, if Gakpo gets into his stride. I think he's stronger than him, quicker than him, and it's going to be a massive sort of introduction to Premier League football, really, for Kushnerov if he starts. So yeah, let's hope Gakpo can make it, because I think that is the big one in all of this. If not, then Diaz plays instead of Gakpo.
Dolly, score predictions, I think you'd probably be able to throw good money and probably get not a great price in terms of 2-2, but with Liverpool's running trend away from home, it feels like it could be a nailed on 2-2, or do you disagree?
Well, it probably is a nailed on 2-2. So if it's not going to be 2-2, I think Liverpool might win 2-1. But what I would say is this: if Liverpool win, they will definitely win the league. Not to say that if they don't win, they won't. And I said this before the Everton game, and I said this before the Forest game, and I said this before the Villa game, and I won none of them. So I'm not sure what that tells us, but this is the fourth time looking at it, and probably the last time I'm going to do it.
Is it a title-defining, title-securing game, possible win, Gorsty?
Yeah, it could be, if they win. Then it's 11 games left, and the points difference would be a minimum of, where are we? 8, is it?
Yeah. 8, but Arsenal will have a game in hand, presumably.
Yeah, and then obviously they've still got to come to Anfield. Yeah, I see, like Doyle referenced earlier on, Jamie Carragher's Telegraph column this week, and it starts with the intro of winning at the Etihad and win the league, and I think it is there for Liverpool to go and grab. Whether they will or not, I'm not sure on current form. So, the heart says win, the head says draw.
Any actual score predictions, or are you sitting on the fence to Perriers?
No, I'll say 1-1.
I'll go 2-1 to Liverpool. Here, reporting from the surface of the sun.
I will probably put my money on 2-2, I think. But that's all we have time for today. I have been joined by Ian Doyle and Paul Gorst. Before we leave, thank you to our sponsors, NordVPN. Remember, to get the best discounts off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/bloodred, and the link will give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. And there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. If you are listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and even leave a comment for any possible questions in the future. And if you are listening on Spotify or any chosen audio platform, please like, follow, and leave a comment. They are much appreciated. Thank you for your time this weekend, and we will see you next week.